We're gonna see some serious shit.
Because, I mean, Xavier could have easily just said, nope, you're not going, you know, and had Beast take off.
He really didn't have a leg to stand on either, because everything...
He didn't have a leg to stand on.
Lou, you are banned from any further Movie Moan publications in the history.
I can do offensive jokes, sir. I mean, I did a Jerry Lewis joke on Twitter the other day. I mean, you know, you can't top that.
I can't feel my legs with the thing and the bullet and it's painful.
Yeah, nice.
This is about to go off.
Hello everybody, so we've seen X-Men First Class, we hope you have as well. We are going to get straight into it, and we make no bones about it, we are going to be having a spoilerific discussion here, simply because...
This is like spoiler rape bad, like this is like, we are going to go all out to this discussion.
We are going to violently penetrate this film.
Scorched earth policy.
But out of love, if you want to know ahead of time, before even listening to the discussion, we did dig it a lot.
Yeah, it's a good point actually, so if you want the quick version and then you want to watch the scene, I loved the film. I don't think it's quite as good as X-Men 2. Jamie loved the film. He thinks it's on the level of X-Men 2.
But X2 is better still.
Lou loved the film and thinks it's even better than X2. So make of that what you will. Bottom line is, it's good. It's a good X-Men movie. It's a miracle. Go and see it. So go see it. Get out right now.
Yeah, it's a good movie, period.
We'll start with Mr. Lou Sisma then, sir. Actually, before we get into the actual meat of the film, I'd be really interested to know, what is your perspective on the X-Men? Are you a fan of X-Men? Have you ever read the comics? Have you ever watched the animated show? Were you a big fan of the movies? Did you feel really let down by the last couple? Where are you coming into this thing?
Well, that's quite a shopping list. I have always, I've had a peripheral awareness of the X-Men, of course, through the comics, and that I have watched the animated series a bit. My problem, and I think I've gone on record on the podcast before, with any franchise where there's multiple characters with superpowers, I always find a little problematic in that there always seems to be a character with a power that can solve the problem of the day, and with X-Men in particular, there's so many characters and so many powers that I just don't find that they're, and especially in movies, it's very hard to give every character, the appropriate screen time. And I have to say that X-Men First Class it does do the best job of any of the X-Men movie of making almost all of these characters feel like real people.
It works. It works big time. It works so much so that it's so impossible for a prequel to be engrossing and so compelling all by itself. While trying to link to the earlier movies, it's never really happened before. And before anyone says, I know they keep wanting to use the example all the time, it doesn't count. Star Trek, that is a fucking reboot. So get that out of the argument. And Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, that's a prequel only because it's set for some reason before Raiders. So whatever decision, I guess Lucas made that call. Whatever. Thanks, George. Or maybe Spielberg. I don't know. But no, this movie completely works though. It works so much so that I really don't want to see another one. I mean, it completely it brings itself into Bryan's movies to a point where you think I don't need to see anymore. I got a completely engaging story. I mean, Lou, you're with me on this one, aren't you?
Mostly, for 2 points. The first one is, like you said, because it's a prequel, we know and we've seen in the other movies where these relationships have gone once this movie ends. So there's really not much you can really add to that. So, and plus this movie is such a happy surprise because, if there was ever a movie that was out there that was getting trashed from the get-go, that once it was announced on the internet, people were just, and I include myself fully in this. This movie was getting slammed like, oh, prequel, great, who needs that? But this movie works, and I really enjoyed it, and it's a happy surprise when you get a movie that comes out that's not only better than you thought, it's way better than any hope that you had it could be, and this is the kind of thing that makes you giddy about going to see movies again. Like I just was blown away with how well this movie played for me. I loved it.
Well, also, it's just one of those things that I've said this before. It's what I hate about fanboys is it's always more, gimme. It's like, no, shut up, sit down, enjoy what's in front of you. You got a great movie out of this. You don't need more.
But, I mean, you tell me, Chris, I mean, regardless of what reviews it gets, you've been burned in the past, and that somehow maybe stopped you from seeing it this weekend, or am I wrong?
Look, I liked the first one. I really, really liked the second one, and I was really looking forward to the third one, but the third one just completely burned me. Completely. And then Wolverine burned me too. So I'm not really... I was hesitant to see this until I heard all of the great reviews, and I honestly was going to go this weekend, but I just got busy and I didn't have enough time. So the reviews make me want to go see this more than I did before, but seeing as how you guys have seen it and I hadn't, I do have some questions that I thought that I could ask that maybe you guys can answer for me since you've seen it already.
Shoot.
In terms of continuity that the film world has set up, how does this one fit? Because I know it's a prequel, but does it actually fit, or do they...
I would say about Lou and Phil, you guys tell me if my percentage is off. I would say it sticks to, I'm going to say about 85 to 90% of the previous three movies. I mean, it's only a couple of minor things. One that's very noticeable, and it's a little side note, I ran into some buddies of mine from high school, an old friend of mine, and her husband and her 2-week-old little boy. He just born 2 weeks ago, and they decided to go see a movie. I didn't know she had another kid, and I said, "What did you guys think?" And she's not a geek.
And the 2-week-old boy said, "That didn't fit with the other movie."
Exactly. And then
He's a real fan baby.
You know, it's funny you say that. He was in a Superman onesie.
Aww.
It's funny you say that. But anyway, she goes, I know, really. I slapped her. I said, "What are you doing? Where did you see it in a Marvel movie? Get out!" And then her husband, they had to throw me out of the theater. No. So she goes, she's not a geek like me. I'm actually a nerd, more like, hence the term, nerd Jamie. No, but she actually said, well, yeah, it was really good, but she said it didn't really match the other one, because didn't in the third one, like, they were together and they actually formed the school together? That's, like, she's a...
Yeah, they recruited the young Gene, and...
She's not a nerd. Even she caught this, which is my point being that people do, to a certain degree, pay attention to this. I mean, I heard the same thing with Batman Begins open. Even though that was clearly a reboot, I heard people saying, it doesn't really make much sense because in the first one, the Joker killed his parents. Now it's some homeless guy. Of course, that had to be... People had to get around and say, no, it's a brand new thing. That
Read a book, people.
A comic book. Yeah, but this one, it's a prequel, and it's a problem where it's very clear they don't know if they're going to do any more after this. I kind of wish they don't again, but it's like if you did a sequel to this, you would almost have to make it a reboot. Like right as it stands right now, it's a prequel. If they did a sequel, it would be a reboot. Would you guys agree with me on that?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you this, Jamie. I mean, look, I don't know what the series of the future is, but you know damn well, because I've been saying it for ages. I said it when we did a memo to the executives on the podcast.
Yes,
I said it when I did an article on it. I said that it should be rebooted, that it should be given the kick in the ass, because it's in the perfect place now where Fox knows that, well, at least they did at the time they were making this, that this series is popular, this series makes money, and you can invest the actual money in it to make it big and epic. Look, a budget of a film is not indicative of its quality, but in the case of certain movies, especially a team superhero movie, you need to throw a lot of money at it. It's just a fact of life. And my only problem with X-Men 1, apart from the fact that it's a stellar movie, is that you just feel the budget in every frame of that film just choking them. They did so well with what they had. It's unfathomable how little money they had to make that film. And now, if you look at this as X-Men #1, and you can clearly see the money and the ambition on the scene, and yet the film is not so huge that there isn't room to go in terms of scope and scale in future installments. And, you know, look, I know you're not a uber geek on this, Jamie, so you might roll your eyes when they say this, but people do want to see the Phoenix Saga done properly. So if they reboot it, that's their only chance. We did not get it in X-Men 3, not even close. Of course, Sebastian Shaw and the Hellfire Club are the villains of this piece, so it couldn't be 100% faithful, because they wouldn't then be in any rebooted Phoenix Saga if it's following.
The thing is, talking about reboots, your argument, and it's so funny, it's almost like Fox read your article or something to a degree, because it's like, you know, embrace the colorful suits.
Where's my check?
I agree. You and Tarantino for suggesting Casino Royale. I love Tarantino, but thing is, it's like your suggestion was, if I remember correctly, it's like you should really embrace that, because Bryan's movies were in a reality. Like, you know, they should wear stealth suits, like almost like a black op group. This should be different. And how you get around that is now you didn't suggest making it retro, but by making it retro, you can get away with having the colorful suits.
It validates it, absolutely.
It validates it completely. If you did
everything except Fassbender's costume at the very end, that thing is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Take that thing.
Well,
I love that they did. I mean, if you look closely, of course, any fan of the comic will tell you at the end when he's wearing the helmet, it's the helmet. It's got the emblem on the front and everything.
That is the Pride of the X-Men helmet.
I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, about the performances, I've heard unanimously that Fassbender and McAvoy were great, but is January Jones as awful as people are making her out to be?
No. Absolutely not. She is awesome, because you know why? She delivered exactly what they needed. They said, we need an actress who can effectively play an ice-blooded bitch who you will hate. This is not an insult to her whatsoever. This really isn't. But she played that on Mad Men. Well, the difference is on Mad Men, she's sympathetic because her husband's dicking around with other people. So I know everyone says Betty Draper's a bitch. I don't buy that argument. Not at the start, at least. She's evil in this movie, but it's justified. It's like, okay, well, that's what they needed her to be. She did that. I don't see the problem. She's fine.
But the only thing I'll say about that is, it's not a problem with her performance. It's just a problem with the character. She is wallpaper. Yeah, she's just there.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also the behind-the-scenes stuff going on, and it's so much more acceptable to beat up on these comic book movies. They always want to beat up on a woman in these movies, somebody. So it's like, oh, we're going to beat up on her.
I was actually more interested in people's reactions to Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique, because I found her a bit flat, and I'm very curious to see how she's going to pull off the, she's got the next big movie franchise resting on her shoulders with Katniss Everdeen and the Hunger Games trilogy. So that was the performance that I'm surprised that more people aren't talking about.
She was great, I thought. I thought she was great. She added an interesting dynamic to that character that was never there before. And I thought Rebecca Romijn Stamos, it's Rebecca Romijn now, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Unless something's happened in the last 24 hours, yes, it's just Rebecca Romijn.
So spoiler warning there, it might be Rebecca Romijn O'Donnell. We don't know. Oh, O'Connell, excuse me.
O'Donnell. Chris O'Donnell. Good job, man. I don't think
Yeah, attaboy. CS, NCI. I'm getting everything mixed up tonight.
Just on that, Jamie, I mean,
Yeah,
I will say, I mean, I am by no means the biggest detractor of X-Men 3. I found the movie entertaining at the time, but I will always say one of the...
You know what? 3 is watchable. That's the thing to
It is
credit.
watchable, I'll give it that. The one thing, though, that I will always just fucking hate it for is the way they just wrote off Mystique like that. I mean, it was just... I mean, they didn't even know... to be fair, Singer and crew, when they made X1, they didn't even know what they had. They just hired a supermodel to be a poser, but what they found out, first of all, this woman can act, and secondly, it's a really interesting character that you know, clicked with people, and they embraced that in the second one. They gave her more to do, and in the third one, there was just every expectation they would give her even more cool stuff to do. I think some of the fans were getting, like, really expecting that she'd reveal she was Nightcrawler's mother. I was like, let's just take one thing at a time here, but
they are not... There's certain continuities they certainly have fudged with, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, big time. But
one is like, if Maureen McTaggart is the Maureen McTaggart from X-Men 3, I don't see how she got the Scottish accent, but that's a minor thing.
Appeared to be like Benjamin Button, where she's getting younger in front of our eyes.
Something's going on at that clinic. Yeah, exactly. I'll never forgive X3 for where they booted Mystique out of it. It was such a shame. So it's just really great that they recognise here, and I don't know if it's Singer or Vaughn or whoever, but they recognise that Mystique is way too cool a character to keep out of this. So they
absolutely made the context of the old comic books work, because in the comics she wears clothes underneath, you know, where she's blue, and I think Bryan thought a very interesting idea at the time, which we all questioned, and then when we saw the first movie, we totally saw that, okay, this works, is that she's reptilian. So all the parts, it sounds like really racy, like, okay, we're going to have her nude, but we're going to cover up her parts with scales and stuff. That sounds risque, but then you see the movie and go, oh, this makes sense. She is a chameleon. She is a chameleon just in the design. Here, it's like it works for the character, because she's not really sure about... She's very insecure about her looks in this movie, and it completely works, because she's basically... The movie opens with her meeting a young Charles Xavier, and she's basically a runaway, and we don't know how old she is, because she ages so slowly. She could be like in her fucking 30s when we first meet her, but she looks like she's 10 years old.
And there is that line in X-Men 3 where she says, "My parents tried to kill me." So there is the implication there, maybe, that she's run away from home because her parents tried to kill her, which I think is lovely.
It's so sweet, the dynamic, that, you know, it's like him, Xavier, and her are brother and sister. And she kind of, there's a little bit of a hint that she has more feelings for him, but...
Oh, I think there's more than a little.
More than a little. Okay, yeah. There you go. But, it's so sweet, that dynamic, and like, he loves her, but he's more of, you should probably hide, for her own protection, where Eric is like, nah, this is how you look. You shouldn't hide from that. And it makes more sense why she goes with him. And I guess we should get to the big beef here, the meat of the story of your question about performances. This is going to be a long podcast, I can already tell. Is McAvoy and Fassbender are the reason this movie works at its core, because you have to believe these two guys as a team, and you absolutely buy it. And I know the thing about it is that on paper, we're going back to this thing again, I bring it up a lot, but on paper, you already know, if I'm an actor and I'm auditioning for this movie, I want to be Magneto, because I already know that's the better part, and it is. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot to be said about how McAvoy made Xavier a compelling character, a fun character who held his own and was all comparable to Magneto. You might think he's the badass, and he is in this movie, but you totally see Xavier's point of view. You see why he's so idealistic, and you see, most importantly, that this guy is going to become Professor X. You totally see this guy being the great Professor X.
And like, as you mentioned, with his relationship with Mystique, you can see that he's, he's, as a youth, he was a little full of himself, and
he's a panty chaser.
Inadvertently, he drove Mystique towards Eric, because Eric was more sympathetic to her plight, and he dismissed her feelings for him pretty, callously as a youth, whereas, with Patrick Stewart's Xavier, he would have been much more sensitive to her feelings and that. So I thought that they really used the youthful aspects of the character, his inexperience, very well in this movie.
He's so callous with his powers. Really, he just reads people's minds like it's nothing, and even intentionally and in some cases unintentionally, he outs people as mutants. And he doesn't meet, like in the case of Hank, which,
that was one of the funnier moments.
Yeah, which is in the promo. So when we talk about we're giving us a lot of stuff away, we're not giving that away.
No.
But like he accidentally outs Hank as a mutant, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And it's like that's what's great about it is that he too hasn't really completely gotten it yet. That you can't just do that to everybody. And
I got to talk about that for a sec, if you'll permit me, guys, because I got to talk about this. I mean, one of the things which I've always loved about this character is that the reason he's forced to form the X-Men and Magneto's to form the Brotherhood is based on their fears of what humanity has in store for them. But Magneto in particular doesn't know for sure that humans are a threat as a whole. He just believes they are, He just believes that they need to be dealt with. Xavier does know what humans really think. He can read their minds. He knows Magneto's right. He knows the guy has a perfectly legitimate argument.
Yeah, and it's beautifully shown in the movie, in the climax of the film. And we're not told, we're actually shown what humans think, and I thought that was just brilliantly done.
What I was going to say, Xavier. One of the things I've loved about all the X-Men movies, even X3, I love the way that they deftly handled the ethics, or lack thereof, of Professor X. This is a guy who acts as the guiding light or moral compass for a lot of mutants, who should be the ultimate pacifist, who should always make the right decision, who should never be wrong. But the movies knew that's boring. So they made him far more interesting. This is a guy with the most powerful gift of all. A man who can steal your deepest memories and know you better than you know yourself in a heartbeat. A man who can control your mind. A man who can freeze you in time. And he has no ethical quandary about doing it. Xavier is just as much an extremist as Magneto because he too will abuse his power to achieve his goals. But at least Magneto's consistent about it. Don't get me wrong, I love Xavier, but there are so many moments in this film where I'm going, dude, not cool. You shouldn't be doing that. What he does to Moira at the end, dude, not cool. If you're going to erase her memory, don't kiss her as well. Although that's probably a cheeky gag to a
Love that moment.
too.
Love that moment. Actually, I thought he did that. I thought that was justified. I got to be honest. Had to cover their ass.
Superman too when he did that.
That was great. And I guess it all boils down to we got to talk about it now. Michael Fassbender, have at it.
He is a god. I emailed Chris. I said, because I know she's a fan, I just said, you owe it to yourself out of loyalty to see him in this. He is just got and it's not all him. Let's be honest, it's a wonderfully written part, and I'll get into a lot of specifics there, but he's so fucking cool. I wish I was him. You always wish your Magneto is always the coolest in all the
if anything, it's like he's a badass, but you really don't want to be him. This is a really tortured guy. You don't want to be him in this movie. And I will go ahead and decree right now, if I hear one person say James Bond, you get a kick in the balls. For one reason, you still have Daniel Craig to enjoy.
James Bond!
Oh! Ah! My groin!
He's got one big genre part. I mean, and let's be honest here, I don't think, even if there aren't any more movies, I think this guy now is probably Magneto for a lot of people. This might be the first X-Men movie that a lot of people have seen, a lot of kids, and I don't doubt for a second they'll think Magneto is fucking cool. So that
I heard my audience, it was I would say less than half full for a Friday night, maybe 45% of the seats were taken, and it was black and white, and I could particularly hear a couple of the black audience members going, "Man, I like Magneto." And the thing is,
well, he's the most sympathetic character in the movie.
Most sympathetic character. There is not a moment in that movie where you think I can't see his point of view, and for anyone to make the argument that he's evil at the end. He's not evil at the end. He makes a choice that doesn't make him evil. And the thing is that, well, I'll get to it in a few minutes, but he's not evil at the end of the movie. He does not become the villain. It's like he makes a decision to head in this path, and you can't argue against him. And at the end of the movie, when he does this little thing, and he says this little thing, and I won't give away what it has to do with, because even I don't want to give this away to Chris, but he goes, "All right, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to count to 3. You know what I did?
There will not be a 4, Mr. Takagi.
Exactly. No, but what I did, when he said that line, when he said, "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to count to 3," I went like this. Because once you see the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It is so justified, and you are absolutely behind him when he does this. And you guys
it's fucking epic.
It's
really
epic, and it's justified, and I dare you not to get behind him when he says that.
And it's made all the more because of that. Because I don't know if anybody else is gonna talk about this, but I'll put this on the table. I thought Kevin Bacon kicked ass in this.
He
movie
was
as
superb.
Well. He was amazing.
He was
played the
so
bad guy, like deliciously evil bad guy, like the kind of bad guys that, like, he's truly bad, not like, Fassbender kind of comes off, as the villain but you can understand it. But Kevin Bacon, there's no rationalization about, his position. He's just one of those guys that, like the Joker, he just wants to see the world burn, and he's just badass through this movie.
It's just like, why not?
Has evolved that part. Why not? Yeah, like
the thing is,
great.
he is so great in this role. I pulled this joke on Peter. Actually, I sent him a text message and I said, "Kevin Bacon has been cast as Lex Luthor in The Man of Steel," and he goes, "Really?" I said, "No, not really." He goes, "You fucking dick." No, I say that because you got to know that the other comic book filmmakers are thinking, "Motherfucker, we totally missed the call," because it's like, couldn't you imagine this guy's Lex Luthor against Henry Cavill? Like, totally. This guy would have been an awesome Lex Luthor. It's all, it's all in the past now, but it's like, that's how good he is. I feel like people are going to be kicking themselves that no one else thought, why didn't we get Kevin Bacon for the baddie? And trivia question, kids. You know who else was in the running for this part? Who I couldn't imagine, with all due respect, I could not imagine in this role?
Gilbert Gottfried?
Shockingly, yes. No. Colin Firth.
Really? Oh my god. That would have been great, actually.
That would have been something.
I could see that working.
Yeah.
Especially the Nazi parts.
Yeah, the Nazi parts is pretty something. That's,
It's great. It's great that you have Nazis actually speaking German.
I love that they speak their tongues. Absolutely.
It's, I gotta be honest with you, this is, you're not gonna disagree with me on this, I know you're not, but I did end up being a bit disappointed with Shaw. For the first hour, fantastic. Really great, silky smooth, slimy bad guy to boo at, and they use him a lot. He's in a lot of scenes. It's not, I was worried that he was going to be an afterthought in the film because, the villain needs an actual villain that, to fight. It can't just be, to quote the nostalgia critic, man! Yes, man. Man is a Nazi. Whether Russian-American, man will point his big guns and shoot his missiles at you. Duck and cover. Man will get you. No. Shaw is used quite a lot.
Well,
but then for the second hour, I felt he fizzles out of the film. He's barely used. The other characters talk about him a lot, which helps you remember that he's still in it.
You know why? He's barely used? Because we've seen the threat level now. They take one of the early guys and they kill him off very quickly. And I know some people complained about this. Should I go and say who it is? Since I said it was going to be so spoiler fantastic.
Go ahead. I think other people have.
It's Darwin, the black guy, aka some people are going to call him. And he's actually a cool character. What little screen time that guy gets, he's actually really great. And he has a little good dynamic with Alex Summer / Havoc. And they kill him off, and it shows his character's pretty powerful. He can basically, what's his mutant power? It's like he can adapt to survive in any environment.
Some kind of chameleon skin or something.
Essentially,
yeah.
And yet, he's that powerful, and yet Shaw was powerful enough to kill him, and that was the point of having his character there, was to show how much of a threat he is. I thought. They even have that line, "We can't even bury Darwin," because he disintegrated.
Atomized him, yeah.
Yeah, he got atomized. Yeah. It's pretty horrific, because when he did that to him, I'm like, oh no.
And because for a couple of beats there, you think he's going to be able to adapt to it, but then
you're hoping he is.
Yeah, then you see the realization on his face that, no, I can't handle this. And
yeah.
And I gotta be honest, that's one of the things I found, one of the things that I did like about X-Men 3, even though I hated that they killed Professor X, I really liked the way that they couldn't even bury him. There was nothing left of him. He was completely exploded. There was nothing to bury.
Real good.
It was really funny. I love what I love about the character, which is something I don't see a lot, especially in comic book movies, is there's no way they can beat this guy. They really establish his powers and his threat level, which is so huge. His power, you cannot beat this guy. I never really liked the character in the comics, but I always liked the fact that his power was so cool, no one can beat him. And they never did beat him in the Phoenix Saga. When they fight him, he gets away. They can't fight him. They can't beat him. I just felt like he was kind of missing from the second hour of the film. However, in the last 10 minutes, he pulls it back. And they give him a lot to do, and he has one of the best scenes in the film. We're not going to talk about it. We can't dare spoil it, as Jamie said, but it's freaking.
And I don't want to spoil it for Chris's sake. I really don't.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I did have I don't have a problem with his assistants being wallpaper. There's enough characters in this room, but, and I'm not the first person to say this, I really did not buy Angel's turn to the dark side. I mean, come on. She seems perfectly normal, upstanding girl when we meet her, and then as soon as she joins Shaw, she's sitting with him on the submarine, and she's like, we're gonna bomb everybody. I'm like, where did this come from, girl? You were fine. I mean, it's just, didn't buy me. And I also had
because apparently she'd rather have people looking at her funny for being a stripper naked instead of looking at her funny for being a mutant, which that don't make much sense to me. But that's just me.
No, it's not just you.
I bought that. That's explained it to me, but perfectly while she was working in the strip clubs in the first place. So I didn't really have a problem with it. I understood that character motivations. So.
She's good. I mean, she's good. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, wow, she's
fair enough. See if you agree with me on this. I had a problem with Mystique's turn at the end. Not that she turns and joins Magneto. That is perfectly logical. But I just didn't like that she's so warm to Charles before she leaves. She kneels down with him, she says proper goodbye, she gives him a kiss and everything. Bullshit! She should be angry.
I disagree.
She should walk right past him and cut him out of her life. That should break his heart. That should hurt more than anything.
They have been together too much. Through too much. I mean, for the 20 years they were together, 30 I think. That I don't buy that actually. I guess we should go into the ending is that when Charles and Eric make a decision that they cannot work together anymore, you really feel it. There is pain on both their faces that I love this guy. This guy's my brother, and I just can't stand by him. And yet it's not hatred. When people say he turns evil at the end, he does not. They make a decision to go separate ways, and Charles could have easily had stopped him and found a way to mind control the other people to make him not leave, and he doesn't. He says, "That's fine. I'm going to let you go. I love you enough that I'm big enough to let you go in your own direction," and hoping because Charles is such an idealist that maybe he'll turn around.
I had one small little problem with the film. One small little niggle.
Okay.
The first 20 minutes of the film for me were fragmented. The constant cutting back and forth between Magneto and Xavier. There's really two different movies going on there at the same time. You know what it's like? It's like you're sitting at home watching a really fucking cool James Bond film, and then someone else comes into the room and switches the channel to BBC America to watch some quaint little English drama about a chap in Oxford who dreams about becoming a professor. Fuck no. Switch it back to the Bond film. Thanks very much. Taking the remote back. I honestly, I just feel like you could have stayed on Magneto for the first 20 minutes.
It's funny. I thought that's what they were going to do.
Yeah.
So you hear the reviews. I thought they were going to totally go in that direction. They didn't, and that's fine. But
I don't know. I just think the intercutting they were trying to emphasize the difference between their two backgrounds, and those backgrounds are what leads to their philosophical differences.
Charles came from
their
privilege
of
and
mankind
love
in general. So
I'm not disagreeing that there's scenes in it. I'm just saying that there's too much cutting back and forth. Now, specifically, they do a much better job. They do the exact same thing in Star Trek. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, but they do a much better job. Yep. If you remember, the opening of that film...
Because it's mostly on Kirk, though.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you see in the film cuts back a couple of times between Kirk and Spock growing up, but J.J. Abrams actually cut a fair amount of that material from the film, and he says in the commentary on the DVD that the film was getting far too fragmented, constantly cutting back and forth between them. He was right, but they made that mistake here, I felt.
Well, I mean, maybe it's because with Star Trek, I mean, it is about the journey... I would argue that movie is about the hero journey of both Kirk and Spock. Although it's definitely Kirk's hero journey, but certainly Spock also, since they're both the leads.
And this movie's the same.
And this movie's the same, but with Star Trek, you felt a little more emphasis on Kirk because he ultimately has to be the head and shoulders of the Enterprise. So you go, well, then who should be the head and shoulders of the X-Men movie? And you go, well, technically Charles, but it's like these two guys, it's how they're head to head, so maybe you could justify not cutting that stuff, because then it becomes the Magneto show. And as much as people want to say,
that's a cool fucking show. I'll watch every week.
Apparently, that was the David Goyer Magneto script, was him hunting Nazis, and he meets Charles, and like they hunt Nazis together.
Yeah, I think another reason the cutting works better in the Star Trek movie is that, like you're saying, the Kirk and Spock characters are kind of balanced. They're both equally intriguing characters, where in this movie, obviously, Magneto is a much sexier role, and whereas Xavier's kind of, it's not nearly as interesting. So that's why the cutting probably says, I want to get back to the, like you're saying, Phil, you want to get back to the Magneto stuff, but I personally didn't really mind the cutting myself.
I will say, to be fair, I'm in conflict about it because I know exactly what they're doing there. They're showing the contrast between their lives. They're showing what a wonderful, peaceful, tranquil upbringing Xavier's had, really, and how, there's that scene in the middle where they're playing chess and Xavier's talking about bringing peace to Eric's life, and Eric doesn't say the line, but you can feel it in his head saying, do not lecture me about having peace in my life, given what I've gone through in comparison to your life. Don't you fucking dare. It's like, because he has no right to. He really, really doesn't. But Xavier does have his function in Eric's life. I have to talk about this for a couple of minutes, because this is the most important scene of the film to me. It's my favourite scene.
Satellite dish?
Yes. Xavier's training Magneto, or Eric, to use his powers from a great distance to move this giant satellite dish. And Magneto, we learned something about him that we didn't know in the other movies, at least I didn't. I thought his powers came naturally to him like a reflex, but it turns out he needs, at this point in his life anyway, an emotional trigger to summon up the power needed to do it, which he always believed was anger. And Xavier probes his mind deeply enough to find a good memory, which Eric doesn't have many of, by the way. And one is of his mother, one of feeling loved, one of feeling at peace, and then he can move it. And it's a highly emotional moment for both of them. To be fair, it kind of reminded me of the scene in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, where the same thing happens. Professor Lupin helps Harry conjure up one of his few happy memories to have the power to conjure up the Patronus charm. But anyhow, that scene says so much about both characters. For Eric, he finally respects and loves his friend because he managed to bring out the best and see the best in him. You feel that before that moment, Eric was, as Jamie said, a pretty depressed, self-loathing cat, only happy when he was killing Nazis, and Jamie debates even that. Xavier teaches him that love did exist in his life, that it can make him a better person, and when he is, he'll be more powerful than Xavier or any other mutant. And the heartbreak of that is that at the end of the film, I'll spoil this little moment. Folks, turn me off for 30 seconds. You really don't want to know this unless you've seen it. Go. During the final confrontation with Kevin Bacon's Sebastian Shaw, otherwise known as Schmidt, the Nazi who killed Eric's mother, Eric says to Shaw, essentially, everything that made me who I am, I owe to you. Oh, it's heartbreaking. He's given up on the happier path. He's content to be who he is. Angry. And what's really interesting is what happens
you can't argue.
You can't argue. And what happens right after that is Magneto stops all the US and Russian missiles in mid-air, and it's not said, but I feel there's an unspoken moment right there between Xavier and Magneto, where Magneto is saying, can you freeze this moment in time, Charles? Nope, I can. He, at that moment, he's not following Xavier's path, but he is the more powerful mutant. He's proven Xavier wrong. He didn't need his teaching to make it work. And it makes the other movies more interesting now, because you never realised that Magneto's power needed an emotional trigger. I always assumed it came naturally to him, even when he's ripping the bridge apart in X3. But what if every time he does something, it's because he is remembering his mother, remembering his anger, remembering why he's doing what he's doing. Oh, love it. Love it. There's a great and risky balancing act that's being pulled off with the film, mixing between the drama integrity of the piece, but it's really embracing the 60s swinging vibe of the period. In this film, Mutants say
Absolutely.
fuck. Mutants party. Mutants abuse their powers to pick up chicks. Mutants go to strip
Don't
clubs.
they do the- yeah,
Mutants work at
they
strip
go- they-
clubs.
Yeah, they do the monkey, don't they?
They do the monkey. This film has, I think, a very British sense of humour at times, and there's debate, and we've been talking about stuff here, about how much Singer brought to it versus how much is Matthew Vaughn. I think one thing you can definitely say Vaughn brought to it is that very British sense of humour, and I wonder how well some of it...
I watch this and I see Bryan all over this movie. You definitely see that with... When I hear people say, like, oh, well, it's international, that automatically makes it Vaughn. What the fuck kind of argument is that?
It's true. Tell me this, though, Jamie. When Magneto says to Xavier, more tea, Vicar, how does that go down in the States?
I'm gonna. That's what.
What do you
That's
think?
what. I actually do like they give like the '60s for you see McAvoy going like doesn't he say like groovy and shit like that? I just like I just
he
love
says that
like
a couple of times. Yep.
yeah he does, man. It's like
Austin Powers, baby.
Not quite that bad. I think we're scaring Chris off seeing this.
yeah,
It's
don't
not
solve
that
this
bad.
movie, my friend.
Oh, my only other question was about the ending, because I've heard people complaining that the ending sort of sets them up to be, Professor X and Magneto that we've seen in the first couple of X-Men movies, that they set that up too quickly, and that there was room for them to sort of leave it more open so that maybe they could explore more of how their relationship degrades in the sequels. I was wondering if you guys felt like that too, or if it was set up okay for you.
Well, I think I'll take this one, guys. It's kind of a glass half empty kind of argument, because this movie, I mean, we were talking about this literally a year ago, when this movie got greenlit with no director, only Bryan as the producer, and that was kind of it, and they had this release date. So it's almost Monday morning quarterbacking to say that, to be honest. Like, it's justified. I see that point, and there's a part of me that goes, boy, I really kind of wish that they could go further, possibly later, with, like them, maybe in another movie where they actually form the school, and you see Eric and, Charles being kind of the good cop, bad cop with their students more, with actual students, but there was no guarantee about this movie. They had to be careful, and it's kind of the other problem I would have with this movie is that, is it a prequel? Is it a reboot? Well, it's a prequel, but if they go any further with it, you'd be hard-pressed to not call it a reboot. I mean, it's just like, where else do you go? That's why I'm kind of like, I hope they don't do another one, because it's like you kind of paint yourself in a corner, if that makes any sense.
We were talking about this off air. I mean, it's good in this one because there's at least a 30-year gap, so you're not having to worry.
Or even like 40 or 50.
It's true. It's debatable, but
when it's set, all the movies are set. The first three are in the not too distant future, so that could be 40 years. That could be 60 years. Because mutants age slower.
It's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forget that.
Yeah, you could make more with these characters and like have more of a history going on, because, as we said, they are still at a respectful, loving position of one another at the end of this movie, but at the same time, you kind of go, but if there is no others, yeah, this would lead into the next movie. You do get the impression that if there isn't another First Class type movie, that in this continuity, they had a shitload of battles against one another in the years between that we just won't see. I mean, do you guys feel the same way, or?
I hope we do see him. I feel bad to say this because, of course, if they turn out bad, it's like you say, it's Monday morning quarterback. If I turn out bad, I'll say, oh, they shouldn't have done that. But at the moment, it's like, I just think there is so much to do. I mean, the thing about First Class is it reminds me, first and foremost, why I love X-Men and why I still believe in this series, whoever's hands it in. X-Men is a wonderful smorgasbord of powerful themes: adolescence and the rites of passage of young people, racial tension, isolation, finding your place in the world, the ethics of using superpowers for your own ends, the logic of protecting people who would not only not do the same for you, but actively try and get rid of you, the corruption of youth and innocence, the effectiveness of a full-on militant versus pacifist approach to solve the problem, family and brotherhood, and how sticking to your beliefs sends that all down the drain. It's all here in this film, and the best thing about it is, even though we're technically on X-Men 5 now, there is still so much further to go. I think there is still so much that can be done, and I'm sorry to say this, but even if Amazing Spider-Man turns out to be a great movie, it's still bound by some very limited parameters in the stuff that it can do and the themes it can explore. And I just can't get as excited about that. But if there's a good X-Men movie, I'll see another 5 of them. I don't give a shit. I want more. I'd love to see another 60s one which actually, goes into the, sets it against the backdrop of actual racial tensions in the United States at the time, because they don't have time to really go into it here. That would be, I'm fine with that. That's a layer they just couldn't afford to add onto it. The movie would be 3 hours long.
So you would be kind of into the thing about if there was a sequel. So you wouldn't want to do like a decade by decade one. You'd want to do like just go a little further.
Yeah, let's have one in the 70s where they fly into space and stop Magneto on his space base and have Shirley Bassey do the theme song. Let's try that.
Moonraker, high five!
I mean, that's what's kind of cool is that you could go into the 70s and you could go into the 80s and reflect that time era. I mean, we talked about how they influenced by the 60s Bond movies. Hey, Phil, sit down for this. What if they did one in the 70s and they influenced it by Spy Who Loved Me? Now, wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be pretty funny.
No, I'm seriously, though. It's like, because the end credits are done like the opening to Dr. No.
It's really intriguing.
The problem goes is that, what are the mutants you get? Because, frankly, this movie kind of, free pass is not the word to put it, but it's like it gets past this huge stigma, which is you've got no Hugh Jackman and you've got a lot of bottom-of-the-barrel mutants. And with all due respect, I mean, these are characters that not the public really knows as well. All these mutants. Even Banshee, they don't really know. So it's like...
The only way you're going to get around that is if you reboot it. If you're staying on the prequel line, forget it. But if you reboot it, then you can do whatever the hell you want. And I don't see why they should...
But the problem is by putting that Jackman cameo, you just pretty much say it's a prequel, and so that's why
it's necessarily.
They've done that. You would just do no.
Could just be taken as a cheeky sight gag.
Yeah, and I can't wait till they put Michael Keaton in The Dark Knight Rises. Tell me I'm wrong with that.
Or Burt Ward.
Tell me. Done. Exactly. I'm right on this. But yeah, I mean, I feel it's then you could do I think what everyone's vision right now is like giant size X-Men #1 in this, as a movie. It's like, yeah, people want to go to, what was that weird, crazy island they went to in the comics? That
Genosha.
Genosha.
Oh, no, sorry, no, Genosha's the prison one. Oh, God, what's that one? Oh, I know. Oh, my God, I know this.
But it's that's what they're thinking.
The Savage Land, sorry.
Savage Land, thank you.
You're always going to have people begging for the Sentinels, but if you actually had... those robots do look ridiculous, but if you had them in a period setting...
That would be awesome. And I would say do it in the 80s.
That might work. Yeah! That would work, actually. That would be really cool.
But that would be the third movie, so let's worry about the second one.
Exactly.
But, I mean, again,
the most important thing, regardless of what they do, and you said it right at the start, Jamie, regardless of how you felt about, the initial X-Men trilogy, Stewart and McKellen were the pillars of that franchise. Fassbender and McAvoy are the pillars of this. If it is a franchise, you lock them now.
Oh, they're already locked.
It's more important. Oh, okay, fair enough.
It's standard operating procedure to get these actors locked into sequels, but it's like, well, I imagine that unfortunately Jennifer Lawrence probably wouldn't come back because I think some of that she'd get the hell out of that contract because of Hunger Games. But yeah, McAvoy and Fassbender. I mean, if there is a sequel, they would.
She might come back. It seemed to me like she was enjoying herself, but she's got a great part.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got 3 words to argue that. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He looked like he was having a good time, and then all of a sudden he had sniffs of Gotham City. He said, G.I. Who?
You can't compare X-Men to Cobra Commander. That's not playing fair.
The hell I can. And you know exactly what I meant when I gave that comparison.
It's true. It is true. It's true. But I need to end this with something that I promised to do.
Because we can't talk about this for hours.
No, we could though. I mean, my God. This is passion right here. We haven't done this in a while, and I've missed it. But this is why I fucking love this movie. It's everything that I love about X-Men. I couldn't see a much better film being done with a different studio, and that is what I need to say. It is very important for me to say this because, I've never had my feelings about Fox. I've been very unkind to them. I think I've had very justifiable reasons for what I've said about them. I will never understand why they did what they did to this series in particular over the last few years. I started to think
they sabotaged the first one practically too, so this has been from the start.
Exactly. I started to believe that they wouldn't allow a good X-Men movie to be made. I was wrong. I still disagree with Fox's methods of rushing all these movies into production, but whether it was choice or not, Vaughn was allowed to do his thing, Singer was allowed to do his thing. You trusted them, you gave them huge amounts of your Avatar money to do it.
You have chosen wisely.
So we kind of liked it, folks, but you decide for yourself.
I'm on the fence, to be honest.
Lots of shit to digest.
It's,
yeah, I mean, as the popcorn we were munching while we were enjoying the hell out of this movie, that shit.
It's seek it out, folks. It doesn't, however much you think however well it's doing, we can debate how it's.
We got to be honest here. You cannot blame people for not going to this in droves. They've been burned too badly. So when I hear people complain about it, hey, please go. It's like, can't argue against those people. They have been rightfully penetrated twice now. It's justified. It is. It's justified for them to have this kind of resistance. So if you wait for home video, I can't argue. I would prefer you go see it with an audience. It's kind of like The Hangover too, in that it's better to go see it with an audience. But
I think that Fox should be giving me, Jamie and Lou some percentage points for this week's gross of X-Men First Class, such as it was. Or at the very least, a job on the marketing department, because even though the actual marketing for the film was shit, we spent 50 minutes last week begging people to give it the time of day. We managed to get Chris to go. She came back from it, and mission accomplished, apparently. Chris?
I gotta say, I was very, very hesitant walking into the theater to see this because I've said before, the last two X-Men movies burned me to the point where I did not want to see another X-Men movie. And I thought that this one was going to be terrible, but you guys said that it was great, and I saw it. And I loved it! It was so great. I loved it so much. I'm gonna try not to rehash every single thing that you guys talked about last week, but I gotta say, man, Fassbender is so good in this movie. Oh my god, he's great. I mean, it's such a great movie. And like I was saying to somebody else before a couple of days ago, this movie accomplishes in one movie what 3 Star Wars prequels could not do. It makes you care about this relationship that you already know the end of it, but it makes you care about the beginning of it to the point that when it falls apart, you're so upset because I grieve for what those two people could have been if they did not have this disagreement, because they had such a chemistry together and they worked so well. And you could tell that these two really did love each other. I mean...
Charles Xavier, have you come to rescue me? Why do you come here, Charles? I don't believe your mind games are going to work anymore, Charles.
Wanna come out where I can see you, Charles?
Perhaps you should listen to her, Charles. Charles.
He just spits his name out, Charles, like it's a curse word. Like, there's such animosity there, but... There's a scene in this movie where they're using the old school Cerebro for the first time, and Charles is standing there and he's got the thing on his head, and Eric is walking around him and he's saying, "What an adorable lab rat you make, Charles." And just the way he says his name, just like that little playful, affectionate way that he said it, I just went, "Oh," and then I went, "No," because I felt so bad because I knew what was coming.
They're a great team. They're such a great team. And I think we knew they were going to be a great team when we saw the teaser trailer and they're walking down the corridor and they both kind of give each other a look. Like, you just kind of, for some reason, to me, that clicked, like, wow, these guys are going to work together. And of course, that shot is like cut in half in the final film. But it's so funny. I don't know if you guys caught that or not. Go ahead.
This movie is not perfect, not by any means. The movie does have problems, but that relationship works so well that I can overlook just about everything that's wrong about it. And Phil, you said it last week, but I'm going to repeat it again. That satellite scene, when that thing turns and that scene ends, my boyfriend grabbed my arm and we just turned and looked at each other like, oh my god.
And he dumped you for Michael Fassbender. I understand.
Like, oh my god, this is so good. And by the time it gets to my favorite scene in the movie, which I'm just gonna gush about right now, when he lifts that submarine out of the water, I lost it. I was just flailing, oh my god, this is so great. I love this movie so much. This is the best thing ever. And if you had told me a couple of months ago that this was going to be my favorite movie of the summer so far, I would have thought you were smoking crack. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. If you're an X-Men fan and you hated the last two, it's safe to go back in the water. It's safe. You're making good X-Men movies again.
Well, no, let's not go that far. I mean, it's like we have to kind of say this. There's a certain sense of luck when you make any kind of movie, and this movie was made under such a tight schedule that apparently, just like the other films, I mean, for all we know, I mean, the next one could suck. So I don't know if it's necessarily the series is back. I just feel happy that we got one great movie again.
I don't know. And the ending, I think that the ending works, but it would have worked a bit better if that had been the end of the third movie in this new trilogy and we saw that ending happen, because as it stands, it's kind of like, oh, okay, they're just leaving. All right.
See, I don't think there's going to be a trilogy. I'm going to be honest. I mean, it's not really doing that awesome at the box office. It dropped pretty, like 55% this weekend, which is a standard drop.
We tried, Fox. We tried. Me and Jamie saw it twice.
And I might see it again. So, shit.
I want to see that submarine again. I have to.
Anyway, sorry, Luke.
The worst thing that could have happened, though, I think we can all agree here. We could have gotten Michael Jackson as Professor Xavier. I think we dodged a bullet.
I was hoping we were going to move on before that came up.
Oh god!
Hey, I'm not the one who, I didn't write the article.
Jamie, there are people on the internet listening now who are calling you a liar. You're just making this up. You don't have any facts to back this up, do you?
Apparently, not the first time that that's been that's been said about me. No, it actually came out this week, or last week, actually. I think Ralph Winter said that while they were making the first one. Fucking Michael Jackson was campaigning to play Professor Xavier.
When I was a boy.
One time I asked to use the restroom. Once I went in the restroom, they locked me in there for like 45 minutes. There was doo-doo feces thrown all over the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and it stunk so bad.
What happened? She all right?
Well, what's wrong with sharing your bed? I didn't say I slept in the bed. Even if I did sleep in the bed, it's okay. I am not going to do anything sexual to a child.
What mutant would he have been if he wasn't Xavier?
A Nightcrawler?
Oh, you're supposed to love Nightcrawler. I love Nightcrawler. How dare you, sir?
Oh, I'm just...
He can be Mystique.
To go from a character, it's like, either Michael, who can play Nightcrawler? Either a guy whose last name is Cumming or Michael Jackson.